Joseph R. Sobrano from Far Eastern University, Philippines. I'm not sure whether he's on this room or not, so I kindly request him due to... Yes, he's here. Okay, please.
Good afternoon. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so excuse me, I'm sorry for that one. Okay, also, yeah. Okay, so I would like to introduce myself. My name is Israel Sabriano. So I'm a faculty member from Far Eastern University, and I will be presenting a paper on animal ethics. So I would like to share my screen. So this particular topic is about the relationship between anthropocentrism and animal care or animal treatment. And this is like one of my research interests. So I'm doing my PhD in philosophy, and this is the very topic that I would like to write a paper on for my dissertation. So without further ado, I would like to present already my research interest. Okay, so for the outline, I have the following. So I will be talking about a brief introduction about the topic. And after that, I will be presenting some animal issues in the realm of environmental ethics. Then we have Carl Cohen's perspective on non-human animals. And I will also provide some distinctions between the strong form and the weak form of anthropocentrism, and then the paper will be concluded already. Okay, so for the introduction, this particular topic is under the wide umbrella, which is called environmental ethics. And environmental ethics is a relatively new field in philosophy, and it only was established as a legitimate academic discipline around the year 1970. So the very objective of environmental ethics as an academic discipline is to explore the implications of the factual data of ecological science for social, ethical, political, and legal values. And prior to the establishment of environmental ethics as an academic discipline, there had been many attempts to question and re-examine the existing attitude and relationship of human beings toward the environment. Yeah, so prior to the establishment of environmental ethics, for the longest time, there were very few researchers or some studies that would really examine, let's say, the relationship of human beings toward the environment. Yeah. And more often than not, this relationship that we are speaking about would always favor the human beings. It's as if that the environment would only serve a particular purpose. So the very value or the very worth of the environment is dependent on how the human beings can actually benefit from it. Okay, so in other words, the very value of the environment is actually perceived from an instrumental perspective only. So it necessitates that the moment that human beings can no longer get something beneficial from it, then the very value of the environment itself ceases to exist. And of course, in the field of environmental ethics, or to be more general, it's environmental philosophy, there has been some initiatives to really re-examine the very perspective or the very, biases that human beings would have in relation to the environment. Okay, so why is environmental ethics or environmental philosophy under the realm of animal ethics? Okay, so why are we speaking about environmental philosophy when in fact it's as if that environmental ethics is a separate issue? So there's an article that would actually provide some insights, or let's say some claims that when we speak of environment, environment does not only refer to the physical environment, but under the environment, we also have other beings that coexist with human beings, and of course, non-human animals are part of it. Okay, so let's have animal issues in the realm of environmental ethics and the development of animal studies. And the environmental ethics may be seen as quite controversial, okay, because there are some beliefs that do not regard animal issues as part of the realm of environmental ethics. So, like I said earlier, there has been some disagreements, or there have been some claims that would actually go against the idea that environmental philosophy is part of animal studies, or animal philosophy is part of environmental ethics. Okay, but from the perspective of the animal liberationists and environmental ethicists, there are some issues that really concern both non-human animals and the environment, because apparently these two beings are objectified. The very worth that they have are actually reduced to how the human beings can benefit from them. Okay, so let's go now to Card Cohen's perspective on non-human animals. So Card Cohen, in this article entitled "The Case for the Use of Animals in Biomedical Research," justifies the use of animals as research subjects in medical investigations. He believes that there's nothing wrong with the use of animals in experimentation, since they do not have rights, and hence there's nothing to be violated. Okay, so in spite of this, Cohen believes that this does not give human beings the permission to what they please to animals. Okay, so this very perspective is an example of an anthropocentric view of looking at the environment and non-human animals. Okay, so there are some claims that would say that non-human animals do not have rights, and the moment that we try to experiment on them, there will be no violations. Okay, so no rights that will be curtailed, because non-human animals do not have rights to begin with. Okay, so that's very anthropocentric, because when we speak of anthropocentrism, it only pays attention to the value of human beings themselves. Okay, so we place a premium on the benefits, or on the things that we can get from the environment or from the non-human animals. It's as if that this beings would actually exist for the sole purpose of benefiting the humankind. Okay, so that's an example of an anthropocentric perspective. However, there's a caveat here. Even though Cohen believes that non-human animals do not have rights, this does not mean that we can do whatever it is that we would like to do with the animals. Yeah, so let's continue to the next one. We have anthropocentrism, and let's talk about the strong form of anthropocentrism. Yeah, so the earliest environmental ethics was more inclined to the human-centered environmental ethic, or this is what we call anthropocentrism. Yeah, so in anthropocentrism, human beings view and regard themselves as the center of the world. And from this point of view, they consider themselves as the most essential creatures on Earth. It's as if that on the hierarchy of things, or of beings inhabiting the Earth, the view of anthropocentrism would say that non-human animals are on top, or they're actually the most important beings. Okay. And it stresses that human beings are the sole possessors of intrinsic value, and this automatically disregards non-human animals as having intrinsic value from the mere fact that they are not humans. Okay, so like we said, these are some of the characteristics that we can actually get from the understanding of anthropocentrism. But we said earlier that there are two forms of anthropocentrism, and this is the strong form. So when we analyze the reasons why environmental destructions take place, or why, let's say, animal cruelty or animal abuse are taking place, it's because of an anthropocentric perspective that is strong in nature. Okay, so we always believe that the very life or the very value of the non-human animals are actually irrelevant, or they are not as important as human beings. Okay, so again, that's how the anthropocentric perspective in a strong form would view the environment and the non-human animals. Okay, so we have another form of anthropocentrism, and this is what we call the weak form. So anthropocentrism in a weak form, or in a weak sense, offers a rather more considerate perspective in assigning intrinsic value to non-human beings. Okay, in anthropocentrism, even if we are talking about a perspective in relation to non-human animals that is quite human-centered, okay, that is still anthropocentric in nature, it is called a weak form because human beings adapting this perspective are more considerate. Okay, so meaning even if their inclination is towards having anthropocentric perspective, they believe that when it comes to assigning intrinsic value to non-human animals, they are more considerate. Okay, we have the perspective that would say that human beings may be at the center of the environment. So that's quite anthropocentric. But when we speak of the weak form, we are still recognizing the fact that we are anthropocentric. However, we are being more considerate. Yeah, so when it comes to assigning intrinsic value, we allow ourselves to try to consider that probably there's also value. We should also treat the non-human animals in a more considerate manner. Okay, so that's what we mean by anthropocentrism in the weak form. So although a great amount of intrinsic value is given to human beings, the promotion of welfare of non-human beings is measured. Okay, so we cannot really get away without being anthropocentric because that's the most that's the most convenient and accessible perspective to us because we are human beings, and of course the very perspectives that we have are guided by our nature as human beings. Okay, so of course that's a given already. However, in weak anthropocentrism, we are trying to be more open. Okay? So meaning, even if we are not saying that non-human animals have intrinsic value in an explicit manner, so even though we are not, let's say, contributing to the discussion or to the idea whether non-human animals have intrinsic value or not, but what's important here is that through our non-conventional ways of looking at the non-human animals, we can still promote a respect. We can still promote some care towards non-human animals. Okay, because it may be an endless debate. Let's say when we take a particular perspective to the idea whether non-human animals have rights or not, or whether they have intrinsic value or not. But in weak anthropocentrism, even if our perspective is anthropocentric itself, but of course, it is more open and it is more non-conventional. Okay, so for the concluding part, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, we are trying to, reconcile the seemingly differences between animal treatment and anthropocentrism. So if we are going to look at anthropocentrism in a strong sense, okay, we can see that there is really no, there's really no compatibility, or it's as if that they are not really aligned with each other. But when we are going to adapt the weak form, or let's say Cohen's belief that non-human animals must be, we cannot do anything that we would like to do with them, then in a way we can promote animal care, or the proper way of treating non-human animals. Okay, so the very perspective of Cohen believes that non-human animals have no rights, reflects the weak form of anthropocentrism. So having rights is in no way a prerequisite to be treated with utmost respect and care. So again, even if, let's say, when a person doesn't really agree that non-human animals have rights, but it doesn't mean that we can do whatever it is that we would like to do to them. Okay, so it's not a prerequisite for us to treat them cruelly or to treat them in an inhumane manner. So the weak form of anthropocentrism does not strive to provide qualities that make non-human animals morally accepted. Okay, so the very weak form of anthropocentrism may not really provide some understanding or perspective towards whether, like I said, non-human animals should have, let's say, rights or not. But the weak form of anthropocentrism would say that, it's still important that we show care and respect towards the non-human animals, irrespective of the possibilities whether they have rights or not. Okay, so that concludes my presentation. So I would like to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to present this short research. So have a nice day, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Israel Joseph.